It's Friday, the 10th of September 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, then find more news and interviews in our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. In today's headlines, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian outlines a reopening of the state economy from mid-next month, assuming people keep getting vaccinated. Plus, Crown Resorts rewards outgoing senior managers handsomely despite the horror run for the gaming giant. Treasury wine estates to go fully green within 3 years. And crisis? What crisis? Western Australia records a record budget surplus. Our lead story today, New South Wales will reopen for fully vaccinated citizens in mid-October, the point at which 70% of the population is expected to be double jabbed. Pubs, gyms, stadiums and homes will be opened up. Travel within the state will be allowed and economic support will continue. But Premier Gladys Berejiklian has warned that the reopening will come alongside a jump in COVID cases, mostly among the unvaccinated. New South Wales has been in lockdown for 11 weeks and it still has 5 to go, according to the new timetable. Currently, 43% of the state is fully vaccinated, while almost 76% have had their first dose. Ms Berejiklian's timetable was revealed on the day the state recorded 1,405 cases of COVID. There were 5 deaths. Outside Sydney, many restrictions will lift from this weekend, though state borders are likely to remain closed. Prime Minister Scott Morrison welcomed the announcement, saying it was in keeping with the national plan. That plan is about learning to live with COVID rather than sticking to a zero strategy. Business leaders have also welcomed the initiative, with National Australia Bank boss Ross McEwen and Westpac's Chief Executive Peter King both forecasting a pickup in growth as the economy reopens. The move out of lockdown is welcome, but it's going to be bumpy. Ms Berejiklian has made it clear that if you're not vaccinated, you won't enjoy freedoms that everyone else has. And that's that. In overseas news, Chinese regulators have called in gaming companies, including Tencent Holdings, and told them to de-emphasise profits, triggering a sharp sell-off. Beijing wants the gaming groups to break from the solitary focus of pursuing profit to prevent minors from being addicted to games, and they should also remove obscene and violent content. US President Joe Biden will force federal workers to get vaccinated, otherwise face rigorous testing and mask protocols. He's also likely to push that rule out to the executive branch, that's the White House people, and contractors who do business with the federal government. Vaccination rates in the US have slowed in recent weeks. And Kim Jong-un, the idiosyncratic leader of North Korea, has appeared in public for the first time in weeks, looking slimmer and tanned. There's been speculation about his health given his family's history of heart disease. North Korea is facing one of its worst food shortages in years, hit by sanctions for its testing of nuclear weapons. Locally, the S&P ASX 200 closed down almost 2% yesterday to 7,370 points. All 11 subsectors of the index were lower. That's unusual in what you call a broad-based sell-off. There's also been some big moves in commodities. Oil prices were lower overnight, falling more than 1.5% after China announced it will sell oil from its state petroleum reserves for the first time in an effort to rein in inflationary pressures. Crown Resorts paid nearly $24 million to outgoing executives last financial year, a year in which its application for a gaming licence in New South Wales was knocked back. Royal commissions in Victoria and Western Australia were announced, and lockdowns triggered a $261 million loss. The gaming group's annual report shows Ken Barton, the former chief executive of whom the New South Wales Bergen inquiry said wasn't up to the job, received $6.3 million. Former executive chair John Alexander, who stepped down in January, received $2.5 million, while the Australian Resort CEO Barry Felstead received $4.7 million. It's pretty obscene. Amid the COVID crisis, Western Australia has managed to record a $5.6 billion budget surplus, thanks to the commodities boom, something Premier Mark McGowan said other premiers will be wild angry about. The biggest surplus ever has allowed Mr McGowan to spend more on health, education, police, and dumping a public sector wage freeze. Mr McGowan yesterday said unlocking the WA border would only happen once 80 to 90% vaccination rates were achieved. You know what's worse than a bad loser? A bad winner. Woolworths will launch rapid antigen testing at all its distribution outlets and online fulfilment centres across the country after a pilot program in Sydney picked up 7 positive COVID cases. The company has already had more than 500 supply chain staff forced into isolation, disrupting food and grocery supplies. If the 7 cases picked up had gone to work, it's likely dozens and possibly hundreds of co-workers would have been infected. And Treasury Wine Estates said all its winery operations around the world will be powered by renewable energy by 2024. The owner of Penfolds has almost 13,000 hectares of vineyards globally and is relying heavily on the use of solar power. Treasury also said it was joining the RE100 push, where hundreds of companies worldwide are signing up to accelerate a shift to cleaner energy. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning and search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. There you'll also find our daily interview. Today we're talking to Matthew Knott, the Sydney Morning Herald and Age Washington correspondent, about the State of the Union 20 years after 9/11. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter, or go to fearandgreed.com.au. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.